Hey y'all,
What up, everybody?
who's here? Let us know if you can hear us. If you
Yes.
yes.
And definitely, say hello to us in the chat.
Yeah, this is the chat back. Y'all was real chirpy last week. This is the time. This is really the time to chop it up. Is anybody? Oh, it says 3 people watching. What up, y'all three? What up, trio?
It's not clear yet who you are because we can only see the numbers, but
Mm-hmm.
okay. All right.
Oh, what up, Sheena? What up, Christian? Is it Christian? Yes, Christian, right? Not or Christian. What up, Lady Fauge? Fauge?
So you're better at me than that.
Oh my gosh. We can't pronounce anything. What up, LF? No. Oh my gosh.
Oh, man.
Y'all, did y'all do the reading? Sheena, you always talk about what up, Ricky? Sheena, you always talk about do the fucking reading. You do your reading. Tip of the spear. We talking about it.
Yep.
Well, just the introduction in chapter 1. But y'all, Ori will be here, funky fresh and in the flesh next week. Well, not in the flesh, in the pixels.
Virtual?
Right, in the pixels. If you notice, we're not in the same house this time. My baby is sick, y'all. My baby is sick. It's so sad. She got this really crazy cough. We just went to the doctors today, so it's not COVID. We don't think it's the flu. She just probably has a cold. But with babies, you can't give them anything, especially babies under 4 months. So she just gotta bang it out, man. It's so sad.
Suffer through it.
It's so sad. It's so sad. I did cry once. I'm not gonna lie, y'all. It's sad.
Oh.
I know, because she was coughing. She was hacking up her little lung. I was like, oh my God. No more Cara. Yeah, it is the travel.
Travel.
Back to back. And long flight. So the flight, we flew to LA. So the flight there is 6 hours. The flight back was about 5 hours. So yeah. Shout out Sankara. Oh, new
Also,
mom.
thank you to y'all for being understanding with us in terms of the time change. When we, realized that Sankara was still sick, we had to figure out what we were going to do to accommodate what needed to happen with her. So we are here.
And it might happen again. Just getting your minds between 4 and 7. Your girls will be with you between 4 and 7. Keep it nice. We'll let you know beforehand, but hopefully 4. But you never know with children and with our travel schedules, with everything, you just never know. So,
but we are going to do our best to be consistent. In
I feel like between 4 and 7 is
no, that's what I mean in terms of being here on Mondays. That's what I mean.
Oh yes, definitely Monday. Oh yeah, definitely within the 24 hours called Monday, we shall be here.
What did that say? I see Chunk going through his not feeling well and just start wanting to fight sickness from. Oh, take my muse. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's so sad. They just so little.
I know.
They just so little. But she's still happy. Like her baseline is still happy. Like she's not. The doctor was so in love with her today. We didn't see our normal pediatrician. It was a different one, and she was just like, first of all, we've been doing tummy time since like day 1, and so she was like, I don't know if I'm impressed more with like her neck strength or with her leg strength, because she also can like move her legs in a certain way.
She be kicking.
She can almost crawl. It's not that she can crawl, but because she doesn't have the coordination, but she can move her legs in a crawling motion. And her baseline is still happy. So even though she's sick, she's still smiling. She's still playful. She's just coughing like she smoked a pack a day, which is so wild. I know.
I know how that feels with my chronic post-nasal drip. I'm always clearing my throat.
I thought of you the whole time. I was like, man, she got the Layla cough right now.
Listen, I was even feeling bad because I was like, even though I haven't been sick, I don't know. I was like, did I give her something? I was like, oh, even feeling guilty on my end.
The thing is, we could never know because we all been outside.
Yeah.
And she been any and everywhere. Tonga be taking her to the his gigs and holding her while he's spitting on the mic. So it's like it could be any number of things. It's like she gonna be out. She gonna be outside. So she gonna get sick. It's just the nature of the beast. So
all right. Well, I think we have sufficiently warmed up. We got a good 20 folks in the room.
What's up, y'all?
So,
Well, we're gonna start with, we want to just read through the comments y'all left underneath our video last week. So feel free to leave comments. Nothing crazy. I had to cuss one of y'all out one time for leaving.
oh my Lord.
But yes, feel free to leave comments. We will respond to them. So the first one says, "Welcome back, miss both of y'all. We missed y'all too. Thanks for being here."
And from Eric, they're back. Yes, we are back in full effect.
And then we got Dorian Sapiens. I don't know if that's the big homie Dorian, but if whatever Dorian this is, it says, just when I've given up hope. Don't keep hope alive. Jesse Jackson told us to keep hope alive. We are back, but I feel you because we was gone for a minute. But yes, we are back.
This is I believe this Rita is actually a friend of mine from Cuba, who said, "Hi, congratulations, friends." So shout out to Rita. Rita Olga is a fierce ass Afro-Cuban woman. She's a wonderful resource if you get to spend any time in Cuba to help connect you with artists, with activists, with academics, and she just generally knows the place and she's good people. So shout out to Rita.
Shout out Rita. And then Joey Africa was laughing at something. So click on that.
Yes.
What was Joey Africa laughing at? 43.
Oh wait, I got the
Khaled. And I think that, what he gonna say? Palestinians, we the best. Who we, nigga? Like, come on. Like, why are people worried about what the fuck DJ Khaled got to say? It doesn't matter. I don't care what the Hadids have to say. And I think it's really weird that imperialist media is actually lifting these people up. It's like, it's great if they're on the right side of history, but the DJ Khaled part. Well, I'm out for real though, because DJ Khaled goofy. I haven't seen too many infographics like, where's DJ Khaled? He hasn't said anything. Like, y'all, like, let it go. Let it go.
However, I do agree with you on that. But I also think that for some people, again, I think this is that question about reach, right? And for some people, not so much for us, but for some people, for him or people like him, right, to have a platform and to be quiet, it is not, it is conspicuous, right? So I can understand why some people might feel, inclined that way.
Well, who's Black DJ Khaled? Would it be like Timbaland, Jazzy Faye? Anyway, I wouldn't want Black DJ Khaled saying shit about Black people, so I don't know, but touche.
Not Jazzy Faye. Okay, so this next comment I think is about Dune, which when we mentioned it last week, I had not watched the first one, and then I went back and watched it, so that made your comments even funnier. But I'm gonna play this clip.
Y'all got Willie as the hero of this fucking movie, young Willie Dub. Okay.
No, anyway. But for a point of reference, my issue with Zoe Saldana is many things, including her lack of acknowledgement for Blackness. But in Colombiana in particular, the girl weighs 35 pounds. How is she kicking everybody's ass? I just don't understand. But anyway,
not too skinny shaming. Same rate. Not too skinny shaming. Ooh, Layla.
No, listen. My only thing is, I know I could pick Zoe Saldana up and throw her over my shoulder. That's what I know.
But I was precisely skinny shaming. I feel okay skinny shaming white man, but yeah, exactly. But this says when that skinny white man stomped to get the older man to bow to him. Absolutely, it's like that little tap. You little tapping that little toe, little twinkle toes. What you doing? Ain't nobody bowing to that.
Tapping his twinkle toes. Oh my god. Okay. So Kosi, I love this and look forward to some more chats with you all. Where can I engage and submit questions? Okay, so we have a Gmail that is lifestudyrevolution@gmail.com, right? That's it. It's nothing else, right? So any questions or things that you would like for us to potentially address in the next episode, or things, you can always send your questions to lifestudyrevolution@gmail.com.
Oh yes, sorry. This has everything to do with Willy Wonka. Ain't he dating Kylie Jenner?
I do not know. I'm not up.
They're all going through their ugly white man phase right now, which is very funny to me. Very funny. But anyway,
so Elon said, Sharice said manorexic last week. I think Layla is okay. I don't know what. Okay.
I did say manorexic, but it's not an empirical term, but I'm sure it's an urbandictionary.com. So
Urban Dictionary. Oh my god, action star. I really do feel like that. I'm sorry, y'all. Like I don't know. Some of y'all have met me in person, some of you have not, but I'm not a small person, and it just I don't know. It just feels not realistic when I know. But also, it's true that most men in Hollywood are also not that big either. Most of
right.
them about 5'7", anyway, and shooting up angles. So that's a whole other thing.
But to be fair, an ant can lift like 1,000 times his body weight.
An ant.
Well, we're all animals, filthy animals. Allende 65 said, how about inviting Dr. David Hines to talk about politics in the Caribbean? Hey, did y'all know that Dr. David Hines was my professor in undergrad? Like he taught Caribbean politics at Arizona State University. He's still there. I was friends with his daughters, Zoe and Tabitha. They're still in Arizona, I believe. I know Zoe is for sure. But yeah, I can ask him. David Hines, he was in the WPA and wrote, about, or he's written about Guyanese politics in particular because he's Guyanese. But yeah, I can definitely ask him. He talk a lot, but so we just got to be prepared for that. But he's very smart, very passionate man. And he used to have a show. I think it was called Caribbean Thunder or something. He used to have a show back when he had hair. And so he was
like brag.
he would show clips of his show in our class sometimes. But anyway, yeah, we could definitely hit him up.
Sweet tone flex. Oh, they're like, you just really out here showing out, honey.
School.
Yeah. Okay. So the next we have Geechee. Shout out to the homie. We missed you. We missed. Well, sorry. Welcome back. Missed and loved y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.
What is this 38
fucking student who is just pulling off of their identity and their guilt? My adversary. That is the wolf howling at the moon. Like, we are not equals in this. Like, your fucking again, your identity reductionist opinion is not the same as my research position.
So this is nice because I have an update about this particular student. So last week shut up. Last week when we discussed this, this event initially happened, I think, back in like February, right? Or maybe even the end of January. It happened right before the drop ad period for the course, right? So the fact that the particular student chose not to drop the class, they've continued to engage. I was, counseled by my father to say, it is actually really hard for people to have to reckon with ideas that disrupt the entire way that they've understood themselves in the world. And so you can kind of understand how it might be difficult for that particular student. And so I was kind of like coming around to that notion, right? That maybe she was in the class, she was learning, she was engaging. Much to my chagrin, I had an update from my students last week that I was not aware of. So when I went to Paris, I had my TA, my lovely TA, Jania Brown, I love her to death, guest lecture for class. I forget what because that's not even, they were actually talking about sort of queer politics and organizing. So I'm not even sure exactly. Oh, actually, I think I do. I think they were probably having some kind of conversation about intersectionality because the Zionist student decides to bring up the fact that this is okay. Actually, let me take a step back. Another one of the students in the class came to me to meet with me. And they said to me, I just wanted to give you an update from last week. Because I don't know if anyone has told you this. I was like, what? They said, while you were gone, that particular student decided to tell the class that since, as of late, they have become more and more involved with Hillel leadership on campus. If y'all know anything about Hillel, that is basically Israel's student arm of their wing, right? That is how they, engage students. That is one of the ways in which they create disruptions on campus. That is how they try. In fact, the professor who taught the same class I'm teaching last semester, they actually, one of the Zionist students in their class asked if they could actually bring a rabbi from Hillel to sit in on their class, right? So there's also this surveillance. But anyway, so not only that, right? The student also mentions that Hillel had brought this Ethiopian Jewish woman. I cannot remember her name off top, and I don't even know that it needs to be said, but had brought this Ethiopian Jewish woman to campus the week before spring break. Now, what is interesting about this is that, and this is what the student who came to report it to me said, what's interesting about this is that that particular Zionist student decided to raise this on the one day of the entire semester where I was not present in class to respond to and or push back. So I asked the student, well, what did y'all say? And the student told me that it was basically like weird and awkward and they didn't know what to say. And so they kind of kept going, which I'm a little disappointed, but also like, I know sometimes things happen and you're just like, I don't know how to respond to this. And so I'm not holding anything against them. But then even beyond that, my wonderful TA created a feedback form because my TA wanted just feedback on her teaching, all those kinds of things for the future. And one of the questions she asked was, what did you dislike the most about class? And one of the comments was when that random student brought up the IDF in class. So I just say this I just give that update as in I was trying to give that particular student the benefit of the doubt that perhaps they were struggling with their own ideas and staying in the class to do so. And clearly I was wrong. So.
I will never knock you for having grace, but I love being right. And David Spielberg, lying is Zionist is crazy.
Yes. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
We absolutely cannot accuse them of not being organized. That again is where they outshine us in many regards in terms of the organization. So
100%. So why'd I just click out of that? What's the next comment? Let's see. Oh, so somebody said, oh no. Yeah. If it helps with studying your YouTube metrics, we will never do that. I didn't know y'all had a channel and this just popped up on my homepage today. Most of my time on YouTube is watching Pan-African socialist creators, so the algorithm seemed to work. Definitely going to be tuning in more. Well, shout out to you. Is it the financial analyst 131?
Yeah.
Shout out to you. Shout out to my contacts for working with that small writing. I do not have this in full.
Oh yeah, because it's harder to make the comments big. I can make the video bigger, but the comments are harder.
Yeah, no, the metrics.
But I actually do. I don't know that I study the metrics, but I do look at the metrics because I'm just interested. When Two Black was working with us, he definitely did all that stuff.
Right.
That is something that we will probably at some point figure out, but who knows? So
wouldn't even know where to look. Wouldn't know where to start. Never crossed my mind.
Well, actually, right here it says analytics, so that's where we can go to look at the data.
Wonderful. Don't care. I see like the 8 views we have, and I'm like, we're back, baby. But no, that's great. I'm glad to know that it's there and that the algorithm is working because the algorithm is usually a hating ass bitch. But I'm glad that it's working.
You are on one today, as usual. Okay, so thank you to Tay-C. I don't know Tay-C. I don't know how, but thank you. Yes, we are back. And then this is the final comment we had on the main page, which I'm pretty sure this was about the Pan-African Congress. Teresa said that she got the email without context. I had a phone call. Actually, I had 2 conversations with someone whose name is escaping me right now, but he's a professor at Lincoln. He had reached out to me, and I believe Jackie knew him, so he reached out to me. Yeah, but the short of that was, you said I thought it was a scam. So I
think Ricky said that, and I concurred that.
Yeah,
Nigerian
419 scams.
You feel me? So, anyway, so keep on commenting, y'all. That was fun to read through y'all's feedback and your support for us being back. Like, yes, we are. It took us a while. We were very raggedy on that end, but here we are. So 2 weeks in a row.
So before we get into deep in the conversation about tip of the spear, we do have just a couple of updates. Did you want to share anything about your LA talks?
So I went to LA and it was very Hectic. I mean, it was fun, but okay. So let me start. So I went for the National Conference of Black Political Scientists, and once I knew I was going to be there, I lined up a talk at Midnight Books, Cal State University Long Beach, Cal State University LA, and then the homies at All Power. And so all the talks were actually really good. The smallest one was at Midnight Books, but it was great. One of my homegirls, Tiffany, came out last year. We went to the Usher concert around this time. Ironically, he did not do anything untoward towards us. We were too far away. Plus, he'd be hella sweaty. I don't think I want Usher grinding on me when he's that sweaty. But anyway, that has nothing to do with LA. That was Vegas.
Also, apparently, a Zionist.
Yeah, and anyway, let me not talk about the roller skates. But
roller skates don't bother me. But
I'm not going into it. I'm not going into it. I got too many friends in Atlanta. But so. It was so all of the talks were really good at Cal State University Long Beach. What was really dope about that conversation was two students came up to me after, and they're on the debate team, and they said that they use my work in their in their debate strategies, and they be winning. That is the operative thing. I'm like, you're winners. That's great. Using my work. And so they were very sweet. They wanted to take a picture and all that. It's so interesting when people want to take pictures. Like I get like the BAP art, like organization pictures where people are like, oh my gosh, can I take a picture? I'm just like, just crop my belly out.
I think it's just for posterity. Like people just want to have tangible memories of moments.
It's so, yeah, I just think it's very, I feel very awkward, but I always, 9 times out of 10, I say yes. The 10th time is somebody weird or creepy, but yeah, so it was really cool to have, and that thing was packed out because people had their class come. Interestingly, only one man came from the Africana Study, I think it's Pan-African Studies department, and he was like an instructor. He wasn't even tenure track, so Karanga and them not fucking with me. That's okay. Nor our Cal State LA, where your Black Lives Matter girl is. But that was another good talk. Again, another good crowd, good conversation. It was hot in there. Y'all was sweating, so they had to open the door. Because they had the door open, but then they were saying that you could hear the wind and the mic, so then they closed it. And then I was like leaning over, fanning myself. And I guess somebody texted the host and was like, open this door. She fighting for her life. And I was.
Oh, good.
And another unexpected surprise, Joana Fernandez was there because she had been there doing a talk the day before.
Nice.
So she's a professor at Baruch and at the CUNY Graduate Center. So she was there. She pulled up. I was like, "What up, Joana?" And the thing, but you know how like when you talking in the crowd and there's that person that nods emphatically and like you like, okay, yeah, this is bars. She is not that person. And it just, I just think it's like her face, like, but she was just sitting there looking. And I was like, okay, maybe this is trash, but whatever. Like, I'm gonna get my $100 anyway. But afterwards, she gave me a hug. It was like, you did so fantastic. Like, this is so great. We need to bring you out. And I was like, okay, good. But I was not sure. But it was great to see her. And like she wrote the book on the young lords that everybody should read, by the way. So go buy Musa's book. Absolutely. Side note. That has nothing to do with LA, but Musa just had Paranoid and Alive come out, a book of poetry that also features, I think he said Ricky Ryan, or they said Ricky Ryan, Salifu, and Muhammad Al-Kurd. So buy Musa's book, buy 2 copies, support the homie. And Joanna's Mumia documentary is also really amazing, as is her interview on groundings.
Yeah.
So, shout out Joanna.
Also, somebody in the comments said greetings from Moldova. Is that Mikhail? Like Mikhail? I'm not sure. I think that's how you might pronounce it. But that's fun. Somebody from Moldova.
Moldova. Shout out USSR. Okay. So I meant to, and then the talk at All Power Books was awesome. A lot of the BAP comrades pulled up, including Michael. Shout out Michael, who drove from Phoenix to come to the talk. And I love the comrades at All Power Books. Y'all, they're about to do a fundraiser soon. They're trying to raise $20,000 to keep their space open. Y'all know LA rent is higher than giraffe. Let's just there's another term that I won't say since y'all said I'm on one. But anyways, make sure you help support All Power Books in Los Angeles. They're awesome and dope. They do all kinds of like mutual aid and community like material support. So shout out to All Power Books. But LA was cool. The baby and my partner came. They are both sick. I dodged that bullet for now. But it was great. The baby got to meet a whole bunch of people, which is nice. And she's very, she's actually very friendly, which is surprising because I am not, nor is her dad particularly. But she be chilling with people. She was like, what, especially if she can see us. Like if she can see us and we're around and she feels safe, like she be chilling. So LA was cool. It was a lot.
It was 4 in a row, wasn't it?
It was a lot. It was back to back to back. Plus I had my panel at the conference. But anyway, that's LA. It was cool. Thanks for
so Musa said in the comment, we need the makeup tutorial, which I will respond to that, but it made me remember that there was also a question about my lipstick last weekend, which was this. It's called Fruitful. So it's another one of those, what is this? Locked Kiss ink, and the color is Fruitful. That's not what I have on today, but that is, since somebody asked last week, that is what that is.
In the US, because you got those in the nutsack. I mean, in Heathrow.
Yes,
are they out of the US?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
And then just to the makeup comment, I actually, what's funny about the makeup thing? I think I've mentioned this before, but I wasn't a teenager that wore makeup. I didn't even wear makeup through college like that. It was actually when I was writing my dissertation that I started playing around in makeup, because I just, at a certain point, I realized that I was not going anywhere for like days, sometimes weeks on end. I showered most of those days. I won't say I showered all of them. And so one day I was just like, hey, you gotta look like something. And so I just actually started like watching YouTube tutorials on makeup, and then I started playing with my own makeup, and I could look crazy at home because I wasn't doing nothing but writing my dissertation. And then it just kind of became a thing that became kind of therapeutic for me. I think the same way the plants are like that for me. It just becomes something that's a part of my routine. I actually wear less and less makeup now. I actually don't wear foundation. I wear a little bit of concealer, and then the rest of it is eyes and lips, and a little bit of shimmer. But if that is something, that people are really interested in, we can talk about it more at another time. I think also Afro Marxist asked if we were going to talk about Niger. We're not going to talk about it too much.
Hold on. Everybody talk about Layla's makeup is just perfect. Fuck y'all. Because I did my best, okay? I'm just joking. Layla's makeup is always very nice. But anyways, sorry, Niger.
But just to respond to Afro Marx's question about Niger, we will talk about it more next week when we have the substantive content of the next show that we can then have a talk back. But just to acknowledge the comment, if I'm not mistaken, Niger cut government military ties with the US, which should have happened a long time ago. So it's a good move. I think all of these things are sort of unfolding in real time, and we have to sort of see where they're going. And so hopefully we will have more to follow up on when we actually try to discuss it in more depth next week.
Yeah. And part of what I'm just looking at is like, what is the narrative that's going to come out? Is it going to be terrorism? Like, what is the narrative that's going to come out about Niger from the United States? What are the sanctions looking like? Because they're already one of the poorest countries in the world. One of the most hyper exploited countries in the world. Like, let's be clear, like relationships. And so it's only going to get worse, especially if they nationalize the 2 military bases, one of which is a drone base. So we will see. But yes, more next week.
Not Life Study Revolution and Maybelline.
Maybelline, we go to Sephora. Well, I'm not in this. Excuse me. It's all about Layla's makeup.
Well, stop.
Layla goes to Sephora.
Anyway.
But do you go to Ulta?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, it's just, honestly, y'all, I've had to cut into I think I've said this before about the few things I spend my little money on is books, plants, plane tickets, and makeup, or skincare generally. But I've had to cut a lot of things. Y'all see, I don't have my nails done. I like having my nails done. I'm having to be an adult and budget more. Divorce, a lack of 2 incomes means a lot less expendable income. And so, I got to do other things. I've gotten more into cooking lately. Oh, another life update. I need a car. So I just, if y'all know somewhere to look, especially in the Boston area, I need a car. So that's just another life thing I'm doing right now.
I told her to rob that man. We could jump him, and she was not with it. So now look at you.
So we have one more update before we start talking about tip of the spear. I'm going to share my screen again one more time. So this week, CBS and I will be. Oh wait, that's the wrong screen. I'm sorry, y'all. Stop screen. This week, CBS and I will be at Barnard for. Why is it not sharing? For the Scholar and the Feminist Conference, Anti-Colonialism, Black Radicalism, and Transnational Feminism.
Don't come for me, y'all. That's just the title. You know I'm doing my own thing, but
well, but it's anti-colonialism, Black national radicalism, and transnational feminism. So it doesn't. It's all of those things, right? So there's a nice Kianga, Teo Golf, Kianga's on there. Let's see, Robin Spencer, Okisha Khan Perry. So it's a nice little lineup. I guess I can put the link in the chat if folks are interested in the New York area, if that's something you want to check out. I will do that now.
Oh, man, I need to send my paragraph. I have sent nothing. They'll be all right. I'm just talking about what nobody else is talking about. Like, like whatever y'all do talk about, I will talk about. If you're
you're on the first day. But aren't you doing the keynote?
It's like the keynote panel. Yeah, but they asked for us. I think they wanted us to send like what we're gonna talk about just so Pramela Naddison is the discussing, I guess, maybe so she can have a look. But I have a baby and she's sick. So that's my excuse.
Yes.
But if you're in the New York area, you should definitely pull up.
Please do. All right. So y'all ready to talk about Ori's book? For those, I don't know how it works when y'all come in on the plate, but I don't know if it's like delayed for those of you who come in later or if you catch it right where we are. But CBS did mention that next week Ori will be joining us for the wrap up conversation of the book, where we talk about the entire book. But this week we were just supposed to get into the intro in chapter 1. The teacher in me wants to be like, "How many of y'all read?" So I want to know if we're talking to ourselves or if we're having a general conversation. I know some folks said that they've read it at other points in time. But we can get started.
Hold on, Afro Marxist. It came in there was a pack of them. I think I got like I like bookmarks. So I got like all these bookmarks. So there's like this Gramsci one right here. Frida Kahlo, who is getting roasted. I guess she's not really indigenous or something. She like Hungarian. But I was using this Angela Davis one. It came in like I ordered them off something on Etsy, I think. Oh, and this is the random 18th Brumier. Anyway, I use bookmarks because I actually do use them because I be reading books. and needing to hold my place. So,
well, let you tell her you ain't been doing no reading. So which one is it?
Leave me alone. And then this Bones Abolition. I read. Listen, I need 2 bookmarks per book, so it makes it seem like I do twice as much work that I do because I put like a bookmark at the notes and then a bookmark where I am in the book, which is usually on the introduction. But
Wait, I need you to look at the comments. Okay, so the first one was tell Ricky Ryan about not hating bookmarks. What's your beef with bookmarks, Ricky? But then Frida was the first Rachel Dolezal.
Whoa! Oh my gosh!
Oh, Ricky says she doesn't hate them. She collects them. She just doesn't use them in the manner in which they're designed to be used. I can understand that. Some bookmarks are cool.
Yeah, I be using all kind of shit, whatever I could find. But that's
I'm just using my little raggedy frugal bookstore bookmark.
I'll use anything, but that's why I bought bookmarks. So I can be intentional about like using bookmarks, not like a coaster or a pen, so the book get all bent out of shape and shit. So. We do.
Yeah, Rick, I don't like to dog ear. And the thing is, I don't mind writing. I love a marked up book, but I don't dog ear. I just don't like dog ear pages. I don't know what that is about me. But
all right, tip of the spear.
All right. So you all are free to be in the comments as you always are to start this conversation with us. But we are generally gonna start with, I guess, just some things that stood out, some good takeaways. I'm a highlighted girl as well. Yes. Okay, so one of the things that really stood out to me kind of early on in the text, so what I like about Ori's introduction, I think, is that rather than a typical like methodology section, which like they usually ask for in the academy, he has this section making this book, right? And I like that as a way of exploring what it means to do the research for a book and to write it. Because I think one, Ori is trained as an anthropologist, like I am, but I think he, like myself, would also consider himself a Black studies scholar more so than an anthropologist. And so a lot of what we get to see in the introduction is him sort of finding his way to the work, to what becomes the book, right? He has a set of interests that already kind of bring him there, but trying to really figure out what the book is about, he argues, is basically an intergenerational charge, right? Like that he basically was told that you need to do this work of documenting our experience and from our own perspectives, right? So one of the things that I found really interesting is on page 4, where he talks about start the issue of starvation. So he says, where I'm going to start it. The siege warfare, an antagonist surrounds an enemy. Sorry, through siege warfare, an antagonist surrounds an enemy fortification and institutes blockades on the flow of resources in an attempt to starve the surrounded population into submission. In this context, to starve must be understood capaciously as the calculated denial of the material, social, cultural, and political nutrients necessary for reproducing defiant Black life and consciousness across generations. When I read that, one of the first things that actually came to my mind was, I don't know if you all, any of you all follow Saul Williams, but I don't even know how long ago this little Breakfast Club interview was, but I'm going to play this little 1-minute clip where he talks about his diet, right? And thinking about what it is that we consume, and not just in terms of food, but what we take in on a daily basis and how it shapes what we're able to produce. Play this real quick.
Oh, what up, Too Black?
Oh.
If you're trying to get back for the free 99, let us know.
Oh my God, not for the free 99. All right, I'll play this clip real quick.
Because I write rhymes, I write poems, I write songs, and basically I feel like your diet isn't only what you eat, it's what you watch, it's what you read, it's what you listen to. Mm-hmm. And so I'm mindful of what I ingest. Mm-hmm. And so basically there was nothing there that was feeding me. You know what I'm saying? I have a computer, that's enough. And there I can pick and choose what feeds me. I didn't have a TV because I wasn't trying to be fed by that. It's like the same way that some people don't eat meat. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? It was just a matter of me minding my diet. Like I said, you got to be careful. You have a lot of cats. For example, we go back to MCs. My problem with a lot of MCs is they sound like they only listen to hip hop because their influence sound like they only listen to each other. That's when I say they could change up the game. If they listen, take a day and discover Rachmaninoff. Take a day and listen to like the unreleased Bob Marley stuff. Take a day and just travel sonically and let that influence how you come back to writing a rhyme. Change your diet is what I'm saying. If your diet is strip clubs, then of course you're only going to rhyme about strip clubs. I'm saying change your diet and watch how it affects your artistry. I didn't have a TV because I was monitoring my diet.
My diet is trash, then. I listen to ratchet bangers and watch a whole bunch of bullshit. But
I do think you ingest a lot of other things too that contribute to the way you think about the world. And also, I don't actually think this interview was from 2020. I think it is older than that, honestly. I think 2020 is when it was posted because I remember it from a long time ago. And also, he looks younger here, so I don't know exactly when this was from, but I think it's earlier than 2020. But anyway, in thinking about what it means to be treated, inhumanely, literally to be starved, right? Starved of food and proper nutrients, but also starved of the types of things that actually allow us to be able to see the world in a particular way. I think is really important and critical to his argument that he's attempting to make about prisons as war, right? And that in that being able to be in conversation with all these different places and with all these different people and in these different spaces is what allowed him to begin to sort of see a way forward in terms of the story that he wanted to tell. And I think that's really important in thinking about putting a book together. Something else that stood out to me around on that same page was the way that the prisoners in Attica also utilize this understanding of political blackness. I think a lot of times when the conversation about political blackness comes up, it usually gets brought up in a context outside of the United States. And I thought it was really interesting for them to see how they were employing that particular way of understanding one another in the actual prison setting. So at the bottom of page 4, that last paragraph, he says, Attica was and is a multiracial structure of revolt led by people who self-identified as Black. However, the Blackness they claimed was as much, if not more, a collective political designation as an individual identity. Through this rubric, Black skin is insufficient for Blackness, as Moore's derision of Black-skinned Negroes makes clear. And like, honestly, that kind of takes me. So I don't necessarily want to do, we can go page by page if other people have things that they brought up. But that story that he tells about Queen Mother Moore in the very beginning, I think is really interesting for how this allows him to.
I'm about to fix my lighting. I'm listening.
Okay, to have a sort of entry, a point of departure for how he begins this text. And I also, if you've read the whole book, he comes back to Queen Mother Moore in very interesting ways throughout the text that I appreciate using that as a place to sort of set up. And I guess the other thing I want to read just is his argument about what tip of the spear is. So that's on page 3. I'm going backwards a little bit. But he says, tip of the spear argues that prisons are war. They are state strategies of race war, class war, colonization, and counterinsurgency. But they are also domains of militant contestation, where captive populations reject these white supremacist systems of power and invent zones of autonomy, freedom, and liberation. The book's major tasks are threefold. 1, I analyze what I term the Long Attica Revolt, a genealogy of Black radical and revolutionary struggle that emerged among New York's captive population during the early 1970s. 2, I illuminate what I call prison pacification, a campaign of racist and political repression, white supremacist science, and organized violence advanced by a network of state actors, variously located within penal hierarchies, police agencies, foreign threaters of war, counterinsurgency think tanks, universities, the FBI, and the CIA. 3, I examine how the protracted collision of these projects gave rise to new formations of consciousness, politics, sociality, gender, and being, as well as new, which is to say renewed, technologies of racial colonial domination, dehumanization, and extraction. Now, we are not going to talk about the chapter on gender this week, but we read the chapter on gender last week in my gender, social justice, and transnational activism course. And I'm not going to talk about it in detail, but one thing that came up, the students came up to me at the end and they were like, this was a really great conversation, but it was really hard to have. And maybe in the future, you could let students know about the content of the chapter, right? Basically, they were asking for a trigger warning. And I don't know how I feel about this. So this is the context they gave it to me. On the one hand, they were saying, some of them, it was late at night. They opened up the book thinking that it was going to be in the vein of a lot of the things that we've read already. And the chapter is full of rape and torture and all these other kinds of things that are happening. And on the one hand, like, I get that. But on the other hand, it's so like, this is shit that people were actually living, that actually happened to people. And to be able to, to have these conversations and to be so emotional about reading about them is interesting to me. And I just still am trying to figure out how to navigate that as a teacher who tries to make the classroom a place where difficult conversations can be had. But I still don't know exactly how I want to respond.
That.
I knew you were going to say that.
No, I refuse. I'm always it seems to always be around sexual violence that people need a trigger warning. Why is that the only fucking way? Like, he talks about tortured throughout this book, right? Like in the first chapter, which I'm going to talk about in a second, like these people are getting their ass whooped by the cops. They're getting brutalized. Nobody wants a trigger warning about poverty and like the trauma and indignity and oppression that comes from poverty or capitalist exploitation, but it's always sexual violence. And I get that is traumatic, and you know what I mean? So and I'm not even going to say it's unserious. They're probably very serious about it, but it's like, you can't, trigger warnings can't be arbitrary or selective in that way. You know what I mean? And if you're in a Black studies class, all this shit is about oppression, exploitation. It's also about resistance, but like, to me, the honing in on that is just really, it's just really wild to me. And this stuff is so normalized. I am sure these people watch The Real Housewives where they beat each other up every day. They brutalize each other in physical and verbal ways all the time. We watch all this fucking propaganda, all these military movies, all these superhero movies where it's nothing but violence. Ain't no trigger warning for that shit. They don't open up any of that stuff. Like, people about to be cooning, fighting, and doing all kind of things that might hurt your feelings in this show. So be ready. Like, get the fuck out of here. So it's a no for me. But I also, again, I have admitted many times I don't have the same grace as you when I approach the classroom. This was like, I need these people to have courage. I need them to be brave. I need them to know that a slaveocracy settler colony is not a safe space. And so I don't artificially want to construct one in my classroom. Sorry about it.
And for me, just to be clear, it's not about ever constructing an artificial safe space in the classroom, but that, I don't know. The trigger warning thing is just interesting to me because I don't have the same kinds of like when I read these things, I read like this is shit that people will really live through. And like, as difficult as it might be to read through this, it's much more difficult to fucking live through that shit. And so I don't know. I don't have those same kinds of emotional responses, but I also recognize that we dealing with 18, 19, and 20-year-olds that may or may not have had a lot of life happen to them. So who knows? Mm-hmm. But again, I don't even know. I was just like, okay, when they said it, and to be fair, the students who raised it to me were not raising it in any kind of oppositional way. It was just like, we really appreciated the conversation. It was just, we didn't know what to expect going in. And so that just would have been nice. Okay. All right. So let's see, I'll keep going. So one of the other things that Ori talks about a lot in terms of his methodology is this idea of like reading beyond the sort of reformist narratives that dominate popular understandings of what happened to Attica, right? And so his kind of, overarching argument, right, is that Attica is not our understanding of Attica has largely been limited to this 4-day event that has largely been narrated through state sources who have told us that the revolt was mostly a reformist revolt where the captives, as Ori refers to them, were looking for better food, so just basic improvements in terms of daily life. While he does not, obviously does not contest that might be some of the things that they were looking for, his argument is that there is a much longer or protracted understanding of what happened to Attica, and that it was not just these sort of 4 days as a reactionary moment, but that there was a long, intense sort of understanding for the captives of the nature of their imprisonment, and understanding that the terms under which they were sort of waging struggle was not just about contending with Attica, that singular prison, but was about pushing back against what we understand prisons to be and how they operate and what they do to us. And he argues that it is abolitionist in its own sort of formation. And I think that that's really an important sort of takeaway from what he's trying to make us understand. I think about Attica, but I think I would also extend that to a lot of the ways that we narrate these, what I would call watershed moments, as if they sort of spring up out of nowhere, right? As if there are not all of these other kinds of struggles, all these other kinds of conversations, other kinds of organizing that predate the moment of upheaval, where everything manifests, right? And there's always work sort of being done before that moment of manifestation. And in a lot of ways, I think for those of us who understand ourselves to be political organizers, that is the work that we have to be engaged in, right? Like Kwame Ture always says that like people are acutely aware of the sort of, the terms of their immiseration, right? The nature of their oppression. And so people are ready to mobilize at any moment. But the task of an organizer is to take advantage of the lulls to do that organizing work, to be able to take advantage of the fact when the masses of people are ready to revolt and rebel, and so that we have somewhere to direct that anger, to figure out what it is that we want to do to make the sort of most of that moment. And I think that that's what Ori is really pushing us to understand about what happens at Attica, and to really push back against the mainstream narratives of what we've understood Attica to be. Let's see. So another thing so he didn't necessarily narrate it this way, but I saw this. So on page 6, when he's talking about Jake Davis, who is the former Minister of Education for a prison-based formation of the Young Lords, Chase says to him at the end of a conversation, he says, this is on page 6, "Listen, all I can say is we brothers, man. We need each other. It's not only me, but you. That's what keeps us going. Exchange. It keeps the spirit going, and it keeps us moving toward freedom. The more you acquire, the more I acquire. And without you, it's not me. You make me and I make you." And when I read it, I just read, "I am because you are," right? "I am because we are," which is, Ubuntu, right? And there are a lot of ways in which Ubuntu has been sanitized and weaponized, I think, in problematic kind of ways. But I also really appreciate the fact that as Ori is trying to make this particular moment about a prison revolt in the US, that the sort of language that's being deployed is one that is understanding and recognizing the humanity in one another, and how we have to see that and work together. And so for me, that is what the sort of phrase Ubuntu really captures. Contrary to the other ways it sort of gets deployed and used in kind of very commercial fashions, I saw that as a particular kind of epistemological frame, right? A way of understanding how we are in the world and how we relate to one another. Let's see, what else I want to point out. Oh, so the one other thing that just stood out to me, and I think there's plenty more to kind of talk about in each chapter, and hopefully you all will weigh in on these things. But one thing that really stood out for me in thinking about my own work is the part on page 9 where Ori explains where Tip of the Spear comes from. So he says, "My decision to organize this book around the paradigm of war arose from listening to movement elders and taking what they had to say seriously. Quote, 'We are the tip of the spear,' wrote Jalil Mutakim in a letter to me years ago. A veteran of the Black Panther Party and Black Liberation Army who, in the early years of the 1980s, was accused of attempting to foment, quote, another Attica. Mutakim has been incarcerated for over 4 decades on a range of intensely politicized charges, including a conviction for the assassination of 2 New York City Police Department patrolmen back in 1971, a conviction that was facilitated by the FBI's anti-Black COINTELPRO. I was captivated by this phrase, which is commonly used in military parlance to refer to combat forces deployed to penetrate an enemy's first line of defense. Initially, I interpreted it as a reference to the leading role that politicized prisoners have played in challenging the state. That is, I interpreted the statement as a historical claim. It later occurred to me that in using this martial idiom, Mutakim could also have been pointing to the location of incarcerated people, quote, behind enemy lines, such that their effective organization could catalyze movements beyond the walls. In other words, maybe he was deploying this phrase as a tactician, much like Fanon was when he wrote, quote, "It is among these masses, in the people of the shanty towns and in the lumpen proletariat that the insurrection will find its urban spearhead." However, there is a more chilling possibility. The war paradigm means that it is also possible to interpret Mutakim's statement from the point of view of the state. This would make incarcerated people, and especially incarcerated Black revolutionaries, the tip of the counterinsurgency spear that has pierced through the front line of its opposition on its way towards striking a more essential target, us. As a story about war, Tip of the Spear mobilizes these various interpretations of the term, analyzing the cutting edge of carceral struggle as seen from both sides of the blade. Now, this I really appreciated because Sharice is very good at like quick, like coming up with names, how to characterize things. That's something that I struggle with. And in thinking about sort of my own work, encuentros is a similar kind of understanding for me, because when I first encountered the word encuentro, I was like, it was conferences, right? They're gatherings, an encounter. But then when I started to do sort of more research into the term, I realized that encuentros are in particular a particular kind of street formation of politics that is unique to Latin America, but it has a particular history in the Venezuelan context. And so I think it's really important. And I see like a very sort of critical and deep reading here where Ori is taking seriously Mutakim's own characterization of themselves as captains, as the tip of the spear, but also understanding and reading into the ways the state might also interpret that. And so that was something that just really struck me in terms of like understanding the process of being able to kind of capture these big ideas and moments in a very sort of quippy phrase, right? Tip of the spear. This now for me, tip of the spear is synonymous with the Attica Revolt from here on out. So that's just something that came up to me. So again, there's plenty more I think to talk about, but I will cut it there and give it back to CBS.
Okay, so we're supposed to. Okay, so just so you all know, we kind of framed this around 4 questions. Mm-hmm. Our main takeaways, what we found interesting or insightful, usefulness to organizing or struggle today, and other books it reminded us of. Do you want to talk about the other 2 things?
Well, I mentioned that in terms of the usefulness for organizing. So thinking about that, I'll come back to other books because that is, yeah.
Okay, so for me, for chapter 1, I'm not going to be as thorough of Professor Brown because I don't know, my mind doesn't work that way necessarily. But so one of the main takeaways is, again, he's tracing this longue durée of the Attica Revolt. And so chapter 1 is about what he calls setting the stage for that revolt, looking at the Branch Queens Rebellion and what I think Kwesi Balagoon called Turnabout Day. So this is kind of like the opening salvo of what he sees as this longue durée. And I'll just preface this by saying, I can't read Ori's work without thinking about my book, because there's just so many parallels between how we write or how we approached our projects methodologically. So he talks about the long Attica Rebellion. I talk about the longue durée of McCarthyism. So they're both doing like this thing with time, like stretching the commonplace of time. And so that was one of the things I was thinking about in terms of, so for example, everybody talks about McCarthyism, but again, I push that timeline back to think about like the first Red Scare and then what's happening in the 1930s, et cetera, because like oftentimes where we demarcate a thing has obviously a different type of origin story. So that's really interesting about this book. But in terms of overview of the chapter on page 24, he says what he's going to do, right? He says, in what follows, I trace the rise and fall of the New York City jail rebellion, the opening chapter of the long Attica Revolt. He analyzes the public-facing demands while looking beyond them toward the internal dynamics of their insurgent organization, processes of self-governance and anti-carceral strategy. He goes on to say that detailing a process I call sharpening the spear. This chapter shows how jail captives began to pull themselves together, honing their capacity to act as a unit, preparing themselves to strategically engage in a war that had surrounded them and saturated their very being. Making their tactical victories legible, I show how this besieged population managed to exert political leverage from within one of the most repressive institutions in U.S. society, succeeded in radicalizing populations on both sides of the walls, and inaugurated a paradigm of revolutionary struggle that intensified over time. The man can write, okay? That is just, he's a really beautiful writer, which I think is pretty impressive. So anyway, what the other takeaway is the Branch Queens Rebellion Turnabout Day, but also the different dynamics that emanated therein. So he talks about the different factions, like the warriors and the non-warriors, for example, the political strategies that they employed in terms of like voting people into leadership, the way that they chose to engage the media, the way they chose to engage their enemies in this context of war. And I think that's really important because he's talking about organization. And oftentimes, and so there's this question on the screen from Eric Berkeley about what contrast do you pull from Burton's work and Heather Ann Thompson's Blood in the Water. So I can't say that I've read Heather Ann Thompson's work, but from Ori's critique of Heather Ann Thompson's work, obviously she's telling the narrative of the types of, like, I guess, reforms that were achieved through Attica. And that is not the type of project that he's telling. I also glean that I would just guess that Heather's work is not really about organize. It's not about the sort of the importance of organizations and of organizing and how that went into fortifying themselves in this war, both war of position and in a sense war maneuver. But I also think that, again, Ori is prioritizing. He also talks about like the sources that he used, right? So he's prioritizing the voices of the people, of the strugglers, and not necessarily so many state documents. And even when he does use the state documents, he reads them in a way so as to lift up like the sufferers in that book, right? The sufferers, in that situation. And something else that sort of I think is really important, again, is the various forms of resistance used by political prisoners in the context of war. And so they use, obviously, the rebellion. He talks about their use of political theater with respect to how they engage the courts. And so this reminded me of like, so in the 1948 Smith Act trials, people like Claudia Jones and Pettis Perry would give these statements before the court, because they were trying to politicize and organize people, right, who are listening. They weren't trying to sway the judge or the jury one way or the other, because they understood that these were capitalist courts and all of the racism that had gone into selecting the jury and getting the judge and all that shit. And so they would use the court as political theater in order, as a means to raise the consciousness of workers, right? And so it's in the same fashion Ori talks about how these political prisoners engage the court strategically. He also talks about the democratic action that they took, the ways that they convened together and either voted or came to a consensus or did not, and how that differentially impacted the outcomes, not least like at the time when the rebellion came to an end, and it was a matter of if they were going to believe, I think it's the mayor or the governor who was like, if you guys give up, we're not going to hurt you. And then one faction was like, fuck that, they're absolutely going to brutalize us. Another faction was scared, and so they wanted to give up, and they ultimately ended up giving up. So it shows the different, the pitfalls, but also the benefits of using a democratic process. And so y'all know I'd be authoritarian, so I don't always think democracy is the best strategy, but he shows that in action, I think. They also had like newspapers and used political education. And so it's very remarkable how everybody talks about, or like so many people have an aversion to reading and study now. These are incarcerated people who are in the worst conditions, that are under extreme duress, right? And they're publishing newspapers. Like, we have no fucking excuse not to do any type of like revolutionary knowledge production, let alone to read what is already out there. It's crazy. Anyway, and then he also talks about their boycotts of the court. So not only were they engaging strategically through political theater, but they also refused, in general, to acknowledge like the capitalist, colonial, racist court. And so all of these are all different types of strategies that they use, right? And so oftentimes when we hear about either political prisoners or radical organizations, it's very flat. We only focus on like one aspect of what it is that they do to achieve a particular end, or how they fail to achieve that end. But I think Ori gives a much more dynamic, I'm not going to say nuance because I hate that term, but he gives us a dynamic entry point into what's happening. So there's two quotes that I wanted to read. There's a million quotes that I can read in here because, again, the man is a great writer, okay? And it's just all so compelling. But on page 44, I like this part where he says, let's see. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. For Balagoon, all Black people, for Balagoon, all Black people in America are prisoners of war, but most are not conscious of this fact. To engage in combat against the carceral state will heighten their consciousness and draw them into the Black Liberation Army. Now, I think that's important because there's this question of like what actually is a political prisoner and whether or not everybody is a prisoner of war. And so I think there's a strategy to saying that every Black person who's incarcerated is a prisoner of war. But I also think that if one employs that analysis, it has to be strategic. And so again, for Balagoon to say that everybody's a political prisoner, whether it's in prison or in open air prison, it's for the purposes of organizing. It's for the purposes of drawing people into an organization.
That just is in related to that is even the language that Ori uses in the intro, because he talks about the what is it, the imprisoned and the nominally free, and the nominally free is also the folks outside, even us, right? We have a nominal freedom that we have to understand in relationship to the state. I think that's also important to think about.
Yeah, authoritarian gang, we out here. Some of these comments are funny. Anyways, Too Black in response to the question about Heather Ann Thompson, he says her book overemphasizes spontaneity. Well, a lot of the radicals who are remind me I have an anarchism story to tell y'all, but a lot of the radicals who are within the academy tend to veer toward that disposition. So there's actually two more quotes. Another one that is just above that one on this page where he talks about, so he said they believed that the philosophy of nonviolence facilitated genocide, that police, prison guards, and other agents of the state routinely subjected Black people to abuse because they had no reason to fear retaliation. Within this context, they saw revolutionary counterviolence as a violence reduction strategy. Its aim was to make the wagers of war think twice before dispensing abuse. And so I thought that this was a really powerful way to rethink violence and the uses of violence, right? I also think that it's a little bit dangerous, right? Like, and so he goes on to say, like, some people might think they're politically naive. I don't think it was that, but I think that when you're outgunned and outmanned, it can be like a suicide mission to use particular forms of violence. But I liked in the context of war, basically what he's saying is that the use of counterviolence, they're not initiating violence, right? All of the violence that they engage in is counterviolence. And in doing so, they're at least giving the pigs pause, right? They're still going to be brutal, but at least they're going to be like, all right, this is going to cost us something, basically. And I appreciated that quote. The next quote I want to read.
I might get my ass whooped, but I'm getting my licks.
Exactly. I'm getting my lick back. So the next quote is bottom of page 45 into page 46, where he says, while the FBI generated extensive surveillance of the rebellions, especially those involving Panthers, it was curiously disinterested in tracking abuse of the incarcerated. As a tactic of archival power, indeed of archival war, this act of silencing attempts to weaponize history to preserve a one-sided narrative as seen through the eyes of the state. Their surveillance conjures an image of bloodthirsty Black extremists while revealing little about the racial terror that supports the established order. Moreover, at the same time that the FBI was going to great lengths to crush the Black liberation movement, it was hospitable to the consolidation of organized white supremacy within the police, the prisons, and the military, leading us to the historical precedent in which white nationalism and homegrown fascism are flourishing in the open. So that's a really interesting history of the president, quite accurate. And Claudia Jones says something parallel when she's talking about the McCarran Act. Y'all might be able to hear my baby crying. Shout out to her. But she talks about how the McCarran Act, the McCarran-Walter Act limited immigration to the United States to just 50 people from the Caribbean. But she says they had a limited immigration from fascist scum into the United States, right? So like when it comes to people struggling for Black liberation, it's up. But when it comes to like these fascists who ostensibly are supposed to pose a threat to democracy, the largesse, right, is unlimited. So in terms of usefulness to organizing and struggle today, again, I think that especially when Ori points out the pitfalls of or the failures, right? The failures of some of the approaches that they took, especially kind of capitulating to the larger faction, but the less militant faction, what the pitfalls of that are, right? Like, I think that's really important for us to consider is when we're considering what type of structure we want our organizations to have. And I'm always of the opinion, like, if they're gonna fuck us up anyway, we might as well do the most radical thing. I just always believe that. And so I think that his book really conveys that. I think it's also useful for organizing today because it gives a sense that there's always a prehistory to the thing, right? Like, we are never inaugurating a new thing. There's always something that came before it that created the conditions for where we are today. And so I think that that's really important to understand when we're organizing. And then finally, other books it reminded me of, obviously, always thinking about my book, Of Black Study by Josh Myers, I think is really interesting to read alongside Ori, not only because I think Ori is doing the type of Black study that Josh outlines in that book, but also because of how lifting up people who are doing like radical Black epistemological work in different ways. Josh is focused on the academy, Ori's focused on prisons, but I think they're all doing the same type of work. And then there's Joy James's like a New Abolition. So I do refer to my book, Josh's book, and so I refer to my book, Josh's book, and Ori's book as the trifecta, because Gerald Horn has the trilogy. But anyway, that's absolutely like whatever. It's just what I think. So, and then there's New Bones Abolition, which has some great stuff in there. I think that like once I finish my Mutual Comradeship book, those two will be interesting to read together. But New Bones Abolition certainly has a lot about political prisoners. It uplifts a particular character in that book that I think is fucking terrible, but I didn't write the book. It doesn't matter what I think in that regard, but I think her book has a really, really good and interesting approach to thinking about like what is to be done, and especially challenging like the nonprofit industrial complex, the academic imposition on organizing spaces, and what are the types of things we need to do if we're serious. So that is chapter 1. What y'all think? Yeah, let's see if we
what did we miss as we were talking?
Let's see. Okay, Sheena said Albert Woodfox wrote about his time in the tombs of solitary, and I immediately thought a tip of the spirit. It all just makes the connections easier to recognize. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Page 14, comments by ACA. What's that? Let's see. Okay. Compelled to update its riot control manual for the first time in more than a decade. The American Correctional Association noted new developments in the form as well as the content of these new eruptions. Regarding form, they were increasingly contagious, an idea that mirrored the anxieties of 17th and 18th century plutocrats who feared that if allowed to develop, slave resistance would spread, infecting otherwise orderly geographies. Regarding content, the ACA found that post-1970 prison rebellions were less likely to emerge as spontaneous outbursts of anger and more likely to be organized, calculated movements of massive resistance, supported and assisted by outside groups and led by intelligent inmates using revolutionary tactics. Again, which is very important. There's more, but
yeah,
basically organizing is a threat, y'all. That's why all that spontaneity shit, people think like treating, movement like, or acting like mercenaries in movements where you could just pop in and pop out. They don't know about that shit. What else? We answered Eric's question. The same things in the Attica episode of Oz. That's funny. Are you talking about Heather Ann Thompson's book, Mikhail? What else?
Like Oz, a TV show? That is crazy that you would even remember that. I can't even. Must have watched that recently.
Out of BC.
That's the only thing I ever think about with Oz out of BC.
And then Stabler. So Stabler, he was interesting in that show. Well, he went on to play Stabler in SVU. But
I'm not gonna lie, white characters do not like maintain any kind of permanence in my brain. So because I love trivia, but I can only do black trivia because I don't be knowing white people's names. So it's an issue.
Yeah, Burton critique Heather and Thompson's overlines. I say sources. What were you talking about? You said Ajamu says we all are. What you talking about, Ricky? We all are what? I don't know. Okay, she'll say that. Oops. Blah blah blah.
Michael Anderson's comment thought a lot of his idea of programification and the institutionalization of Black studies. Is that Josh?
No, Ori. So that's later on in the book where he talks about all all these programs that they implement into prisons to mollify, right, and co-opt, and how that's parallel to like how Black studies, once it became legitimate and recognized, it's just basically motherfuckers being distracted by shit that doesn't matter really. That was an Oz, right? Like attic episode.
What is Sheena referring to here? That's a Pan-African mind. Oh, Maggie, I don't listen. When Cherie said that her brain don't work that way, I cannot think about a whole lot of books in relation to that, because really a lot of the stuff that I'm reading right now is either very explicitly Black feminist text or sort of classical Pan-Africanist text, and so not as much only remembering Black characters. So I cannot think of things that just come straight to my mind, honestly. Honestly, I really can't.
So is there anything in the feminist text that reminds you, because in chapter 1 he has that he's going to go more into gender, but there was that section about gender where he says something about ungendering, and he talks about Kwesi Balagoon having like transgender lovers, and he died of AIDS, I think he said. But anyway, so basically he's talking about just different gender formations, and I don't know if that particular section reminded you of anything that you've been reading recently.
I'm trying to think. Like lately, what I've been reading. So I was reading this, the Dialectic is in the Sea, the Black Radical Thought of Beatriz Nacimiento, which is really. So I will say this, so this is a collection of her works that Kristen Smith edited and put together. And in terms of Ori's attempt to take the sources as serious, right, and to take all the sort of different ways the materials presented, I mean, I think that resonates, but I also think that that's true across Black studies in general. I mean, I think that because of the ways we exist in opposition to the state, or that in order to be able to do any work about ourselves that is of any real service to us, we have to, in his words, read disloyally. We have to read against the archive. We have to look for the conspicuous silences in places, and we have to look to the myriad of ways that people express themselves that may not necessarily be in published books, right? But that come through a number of sources, and that's what this book attempts to do. And also the book, I've mentioned this book too before, but this is a collection of Arheli Elias writings, who I've talked about before, and that's the sort of same. And I think that comes up a lot, particularly for the women who were doing a lot of stuff, but not necessarily writing a lot of things that were being published. So that comes to mind. But yeah.
Cool. This is just, authoritarian gang. We out here.
I think that's what Ricky was saying. We all are. We're all authoritarian.
Oh, Ajamu. Oh, yeah. I just didn't know if that was like the royal we or like a specific we. So that changes everything. I don't know how to take
royal we.
What's up? Somebody said, what's up? Actually, somebody said aloha. Well, aloha to you too. All right, y'all. I think that's what we got. So if nobody else wants to weigh in on the book, make sure that you guys read the rest of it, or whatever, as much as you can. Ori will be here next week. If you have questions that you want to ask him, email us the questions and we'll make sure to raise them to him. Oh, Afro Marxist, his method of archival war page 16, comment on page 18 about not finding a comforting resolution.
Yeah, I had that marked too. In any case, my simultaneous reading of carceral and Black radical sources, a method I call archival war, generates epistemic antagonisms that I make no effort to resolve. To the contrary, I underscore the antagonisms as evidence of a war that unfolds on material, cognitive, narrative, and epistemological terrains. I mean, and I also appreciate that too, because I feel like so much of the way, at least in the academy, right? We think about writing, like you're supposed to be pushed to have some sort of conclusion, right? That these things are supposed to sort of wrap up nicely. You're supposed to sort of feel good about the argument that you make. And I think when we're dealing with people trying to figure out how to navigate life and create the terms of their own freedom, sometimes it's just contradictions and things that come up that do remain unresolved because we remain unfree.
And that reminds me of like how people, so for my book, right, not to shameless plug, but like it was, you know, people wanted me to like critique the Soviet Union more, and I was like, no. And it's not because I don't, first of all, people think I already think I'm fucking tanky, and secondly because it's like that's already the dominant narrative. I'm trying to do something different, and so like there, when the critiques make sense, yes, fine, but like this is not a history of the Communist Party, it's not a history of the Communist International. And so this idea that you have to like kind of both sides shit, I'm not doing that, you know, but but it reminds me of that because like there's particular choices that you have to make. And it's like, if you're not, you know, we're not interested in neat little bows or whatever things that make people feel like, oh yeah, okay, great. It's just like, that's not the, you know, that's not the work. And that doesn't feel like the most honest or ethical way to approach the work. So
yeah, they said we got to read Two Black's book.
We do got to read Two Black and whoever the other dude is. I don't know. Wait, what's his name? Two Black? It's like Two Black and somebody from
that, whoever that dude is. Gio said, "What's the utility of abolition in the academy? That's more or less an assimilationist project."
Well, I think that part of what Ori is also doing is conveying a more radical history of abolition. Yeah. One that has to do with one as a strategy of warfare, and one that is a part of a larger imperialist project. So that I think is his understanding of abolition. For me, okay, let me put this on so I don't forget. I think that abolition is in academia, though, also a way for people to not talk about communism or socialism, right? It's a way to like get around that. And to like argue or offer up like a radical politic that sometimes is not radical. But again, sometimes it's that, right? Sometimes it's people, sometimes it is radical. So Michael said, he said sanitization of Ubuntu is a fire thought. You should speak more on that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, just that it gets, I feel like it just kind of, it's one of those things that gets, and even I believe Sabona kind of conveys the same thing, right? Like, I see you. But that they get, like, to me, this I am because we are is really in a pit. It's the way of being in the world, right? It is a way of understanding that nothing that I do sort of exists within a vacuum, and nor anything that you do or are exists within the vacuum. And whatever I'm able to accomplish is because of someone else. And to me, that is sort of a basis of understanding a kind of cooperative way of existing and being, right? But it gets deployed as this like kumbaya, like it's not necessarily that, but it's to me, Ubuntu is more of a charge for us to figure out how to relate to one another and how to be in the world. And I think that Ori is showing us that choice to recognize that humanity in one another and to understand that their struggles are linked is what makes the prison revolt, the Long Attica revolt, and even this sort of abolitionist framework of thinking about other ways of being possible, right? And I think that generally the way that Ubuntu is deployed is counter that.
Mm-hmm. Not to undermine that amazing point you just made, but is that a do-rag, Michael, in that picture? Like he's like on your what are those shits called? Your headshot. Anyway, that's radical. But okay, so my anarchist story, it's not even really a story, but essentially some man that's an anarchist in the academy had asked me a question at CSU LA about why. So basically my book is about Black liberation and Marxism, basically. And he's like, those are the two things that are most represented in academia in terms of like radical thought. He's like, anarchism is not represented at all, and these are the people that actually were assassinating people and blah blah blah. So basically making it seem as if like Black liberation through like Black studies and ethnic studies, and then Marxism through people who call themselves Marxists, I guess, have been so co-opted and so have been accepted by the West. And I'm like, well, the shit that you actually see in academia is not the thing, right? Just because people are writing about it or think that that's what they're doing doesn't mean it's actually what they're doing, because capital funds its own opposition. And co-optation is part of that strategy. That's precise, and of course that's part of what Ori writes about. And also I'm like, well, I talked about in the 1917 moment, communists did become the focus, right? Communists and Bolshevists. Prior to that, I talk about how there was a conflation of anarchists, people and industrial workers of the world, communists, Bolsheviks, et cetera, that all became these indistinguishable Reds. And the Red Summer of 1919 it's primarily anarchists that are targeted, as well as socialists. But anyway, it was interesting. And I was like, listen, most of the people in academia do not identify as Marxist-Leninists. Like if they're radicals, they're either Trotskyists or anarchists, like and now abolitionists. So it's like, to make it seem like there's this big, this big cabal of Marxist-Leninists who are like part of academia now, like that's bullshit. So it was just interesting. But shout out to the anarchists who are not libertarians, right? Yeah, exactly. I got no smoke. Listen, and I think that part of Ori's book, he talks about like, there are anarchists in his story, right? And there were anarchists who were in the BLA. So I think that it pushed me or encouraged me to sort of read more of that, like Black anarchism, not online stuff, probably not Kwesi Balagoon and other people, just to kind of see what it is, right? Like, because it is, for some reason, and I could probably glean some of those reasons, but for some reason it's attractive to Black people, right? A lot of like, especially younger Black people are gravitating towards anarchism. There's a range of reasons as to why that is, perhaps, but it is something I will say when I teach my Black radical political thought. I only recently started including like a section on anarchism. I never did before. I stopped with prisoners. So yeah. Mm-hmm. Anywhoozer. You like the show? What's that show? Chicago Party Aunt?
Oh, wait, like the show? Yes.
Mm-hmm. Anywho, all right, y'all. This was a little bit longer than last week, but if y'all like this format, let us know. Like, where we just kind of addressed what happened last week and maybe present some new information, but it's a little bit more informal, although we were pretty informal last week. But how charitable?
That's
how charitable should we be about Angela? Well, how charitable do you want people to be about you? So it depends on what you want, right? So somebody like Joy James has a particular approach to Angela Davis. Other people have I would say more people have a much more hagiographical approach. It depends. So me and Erica and Jaribo jumped her one time at the Walter Rodney Symposium. And I think that but in all seriousness, that was a way of modeling how to be charitable, but to be critical.
Yeah.
So
and we're supposed to be able to do that. We're supposed to be able to, like you said before, have principled struggle that includes criticisms and self-criticisms. And that's something that we should be engaging in regularly. Not release the tape.
Release the tape. They won't never release the tape. They like, no. Too many edges. Too many edges. Been directed.
Hilarious. But just as a reminder, if you have questions, if you have suggestions, whether they be for things to read or cover or whatever, please send them to lifestudyrevolution@gmail.com. But also know that they will be taken as suggestions. So some of them will be taken up and some of them may or may not be, just depending on our capacity. But please do share them with us to help us, create the format for the show. And yes, we will be here every Monday.
So one Monday we'll do like a new show. Then the next Monday, like this Monday, we will basically be in conversation with the previous show. So it won't always be new content. Sometimes we'll be reading a book, not always. Probably generally we'll be reading a book on the new content show, and we'll basically just be kind of responding back and engaging with you all more on this show. So we engaged with y'all a lot last week because we was, bizac, but it probably will be much less just so we can save that interaction for this show. That's what we thinking. So we'll see. Do y'all agree with Winter's thoughts?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like I said, we got to have 2 Black as a guest.
2 Black. Who is that other person?
He put the name in there. It's in there. It's
I didn't say what his name is. I said who that.
Oh, who are they? Well, I don't know what else to say to that.
Who that? Because we can't just have you, but it feels like we have to have your compañero on too. In which case, I want to know who that is. I'm just playing.
Okay, and then you were getting ready to read the other one, Gio.
Oh, do y'all agree with Winter's thoughts on the downfall of Black studies? Absolutely. I wrote my whole dissertation about it. Yeah, Afro-Marxist, when we jumped Angela, that was in 2018, bro, or maybe 2019.
No, it wasn't 2018 because it happened when I knew you. So
it had to be 20, or maybe it had to be 20. Was it 2019 or 2021? Oh, it's 2021. It seems like epochs ago.
3 years ago now, so it's not like that was just the other day.
Yeah. Okay, what else? All right. Well, anyway, sometimes y'all just got to put your cards on the table. Sure, but you got to know when to hold them. Know when to hold them. Know when to walk away. Anyway.
Oh, my God.
What did you say, Musa? CBS, please let them know the capacity of the, oh, God. Y'all, the Walter Rodney Foundation, we love the Rodneys. That's all I have to say about that. The symposium is an amazing gathering.
Look at your face.
That's what I have to say about that.
Meanwhile, how many people have you jumped and forgotten about?
Those are just drive-bys. I don't keep track of drive-bys because I'm not snitching on myself.
not incriminating yourself.
Right. By the way, I meant to wear my Walter Rodney Foundation t-shirt because this week is the Walter Rodney Foundation Symposium. Unfortunately, I will not be there in person, but it is Friday the 21st and Saturday the 22nd, I believe. So we'll be in New York, but at least I'll be there that Friday, leaving on Saturday. But we tap in. I believe it's live streamed, right, Musa? I believe it's live streamed. If you're in Atlanta, definitely pull up. Friday is really important because it's honoring the work of Mama Patricia Rodney. I really, really wish they would have told me months ago that was going to be the case. I could have held it in my calendar, but unfortunately I won't be able to attend in person, but that is going to be amazing. She is amazing, but Walter Rodney Symposium. Will y'all ever get Frank Wooderson on? Gio, are you trolling?
Seriously? Because no. Also, we forgot to mention that apparently today is International Political Prisoner Day.
Yes.
So it was apt that, we started this discussion today that we will continue next week. But in that vein, take advantage of these special days to double down on whatever work you're already doing, to learn about some new folks, engage in some new readings, learn about some new organizations, all those things.
So, Gio, I know you weren't trolling, but that was my answer to your question. We would not have Frank Wooderson. Joy James is so charitable of his work. I'm curious. Well, you should talk to her about him. I don't know that we have anything to add.
Yeah, not about him.
We're leaving, you guys. Free the Piddleton too. Free Mumia. They are not giving my man Mumia the heart healthy diet that he needs. His locks have all but fallen out. He's suffering from psoriasis. They're trying to give it. They are subjecting him to genocide, like slow death genocide. Free Mumia. Like, as long as we're talking about free Julian Assange and Eric Snowden and all these other people, like, free Mumia. Period. All right.
All right, we're really signing off now. We had a nice, good show. Thank you all for sticking with us. And all your questions that you didn't get to ask, send them to the email. And we will see y'all next Monday. Stay tuned for the exact time. Check our pages for the exact time.
All right. Bye.
Bye.